Dialogue, be it voiced or written, is the most common video game device for storytelling. With this, you'd expect the game without any to suffer for it, but sometimes it can lead to something different, especially in horror, and such is the case of The Forest. You remember The Forest, don't you? That survival game you used to play with your friends a few years back? With all the crazy mutants and base building, a part of the game you may not have paid attention to. Or I don't know, maybe you did. Is it the story? Hell, maybe you didn't even know it had one. If you're playing with friends, it's easy to gloss over. But boy is it there, and boy is it something else. The Forest begins as most survival stories do, with an accident. In this case, a plane crash that leaves us stranded in a peninsula. But as the adventure begins, we notice some strange things. A red man who took the protagonist's son, for starters. In-game, there's a to-do list within the nature guide, and from the moment we get control of the character, Eric LeBlanc, we realize the goal is not to survive or escape, but rather to find Timmy, our son. As our first day progresses, we'll start to notice more and more unusual things. Rudimentary shelters, effigies made out of bones and limbs, as well as... At night, we realize how short the word unusual falls for what is about to happen. It begins with the rustling of leaves and sticks, screams in the distance, and... well, it ends with this. You'll soon be... acquainted with a group of cannibals. Nights will continue to pass and you'll venture into different parts of the peninsula. The cannibals, however, will become a smaller worry because enemies will only become less and less humanoid until they're fleshy masses and blobs 2 or 3 times your size. As the days continue to pass, we realize there's a lot more to this place than meets the eye. Eric, besides being a very devoted father, is also a survival expert, but not even his experience has prepared him enough for what hides underneath the peninsula. Beneath it are a set of cave systems with different names and numbers. These caves are the key for the story, as they help uncover the sinister truth of everything that has happened and is happening in the peninsula, as well as the key to finding Timmy. By the way, if you're enjoying this video, I'd appreciate it if you liked and subscribed. Alright, let's keep going. While exploring the caves, you'll find all kinds of things like corpses, human heads, new variations of the mutants, and the remains of other passengers, confirming that we are, in fact, the only survivors. I did my first playthrough of the game with friends, and the first cave we ever went down to was Cave 4, or Baby Cave. At this point, the worst we'd ever seen were painted cannibals, so imagine our surprise when the first thing we see are mutant babies flying across the cave and at our faces. Beyond the initial scare, I soon realized why the caves were so important to the game. Inside are not only supplies, items, and enemies, but also clues and little collectibles that, without a single word spoken, create subplots and storylines. Most don't tie directly to the search for Timmy, but fill the peninsula with lore and backstory. By exploring the caves, we find crosses, tents, and drawings that show us that a very long time before us, other people, most likely missionaries, were exploring the caves too. But the thing is that the more documents and clues we find, the more questions we have. Like for example, if these missionaries were the same ones that brought the diving equipment, the katana and the climbing axe, although they all seem to be from different time periods. The truth is that a game that tells its story the way The Forest does, where your interpretation of the events is just as important as the events themselves, is highly benefited by the inclusion of the multiplayer. We can't talk about the story in this game and do it justice without talking more in depth about the sinkhole, or rather about what's at the bottom. Once you get there, be it through Cave 7 or non-traditional methods, you'll have access to the Sahara Research Laboratories. The game does a really good job of building up and finally bringing everything together in this place. The lab is overrun and mostly abandoned, but it's a far cry from anything else we've seen in the peninsula. The many documents and collectibles laying around finally allow us to piece together the whole story. The identity of the Red Man, why he kidnapped Timmy, his daughter's story, who we had previously seen in some videotapes without knowing it was her, and the origin of the mutants and cannibals. But like usual in this game, this also brings more questions, mainly surrounding the obelisk. I mean, we can see the effects it has, but we know, nothing regarding its origin or history. Nothing. We also have things like the restraining order placed on Matthew Cross, that's the Red Man, by the way, as well as an autopsy for his wife with the cause of death being murder. That's also not to mention the obvious signs of him not being right in the head, and that his daughter killed him with crayons. All of this suggests he could have been abusive to his wife and daughter. But in the previously mentioned tapes, we see Megan in a wheelchair, and everything points towards him trying to cure her from some kind of sickness or disease with the obelisk. So, which one is it? It's like I said, The pieces of the story are there, but it's up to you how you want to put them together. Before moving on with what is in my opinion the absolute best part of this game, I have to talk about this moment. Perfect music, perfect execution, and just one of the best moments of this game all around. After this scene, we realize that in order to bring back Timmy, we need a sacrifice for the obelisk. So we try to find Megan. Based on the tapes, it's likely she had some kind of disease and possibly died, which is why her father kidnapped Timmy. He used him as a sacrifice to bring Megan back. All of this while wearing the red paint, color which the mutants and cannibals seem to fear and adore. What we now try to do is reverse what happened. The problem with that is that the resurrection process caused Megan to become a mutant, and a very strong one at that. Defeating her really puts you to the test, and it was difficult even though I was with 2 other friends. Hope vanishes again when we learn that a life sacrifice is needed for the artifact to work. But thanks to the Sahara keycard, we open a door, make our way through a cave system, and end up here. With this second obelisk, we see a plane flying by and we're granted a choice. Here is where the game absolutely shines. For one, we have the ability to use the control panel and bring down the plane. This way we could get the life sacrifice we need. The symbolism of this ending is beautiful, because by taking down this plane we continue the cycle of violence. You condemn the passengers of this plane, you take another innocent child, the story repeats itself, but this time with you as the Red Man. The worst thing is that, as seen in the epilogue, Timmy seems to have the same side effects as Megan as a result of being brought back, and even though he has grown into adulthood, he's obsessed with the peninsula and somewhere called Site 2. Not only do we take the lives of the passengers, but we force Timmy to live this way, marked both physically and psychologically. There is, however, another choice you can make. To shut down the obelisk, you have to turn left and interact with a computer. As we exit the cave system, the red paint is washed off. We squeeze through the opening and watch the plane fly by. We fail to save Timmy, but he gets to rest in peace, and we know that no one else will suffer. The Forest is not a AAA title with a massive budget, but that didn't stop it from being one of the best and most unique games I've ever played. But what about you? What are your thoughts? I truly hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please consider liking it, subscribing to the channel, and leaving a comment. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in Qatar.